I got asked to just give a bit of a history of composite sheep and what sort of makes me think and tick, I guess, and what my story is, and so how composite sheep are where they are and where I think they might go into the future. So we had Broad-Leicester merino sheep for 30 years. That was the background of sheep in our area. I went overseas to the UK. I came back in 1990 and I wanted to change my animals. It was at the start of performance recording with Land Plan. It was just kicking off. I didn't want to go to the grave with the same animals, and I knew I needed change to get some of these things to happen on my farm. And this is what I needed. I needed some more meat. I needed less cost. More meat per hectare, less cost. I needed more lambs alive and less ewes dead. I needed animals I could control in that area. I knew I needed more growth so I could harvest pasture better. So I needed faster growth and heavier weights. For us, we need internal parasite tolerance, resistance, resilience. I knew I needed a simple system so that I could just knew where I was all the time. I needed to control risk, and I knew that genetics were going to compound and make things help. So these are some of the things that self-replacing's allowed me to do. I've been able to control the DNA. On farm expansions, it's very easy to lease or purchase, and you know exactly the animals you have when you move onto the place. You could buy a place or lease a place on Saturday and put sheep there on Monday. If you fire or drought, you lose animals, something happens, you keep all your ewe lambs, you mate them, and you're immediately back in the game. It's not like you've got sheep and it takes you 3 years to restock. Lower cost of production, health status, and we can add value to some of the animals we sell. So for hardy animals for us, they've always had to be out in the paddock. So rams that perform well in sheds, their daughters perform well in sheds. That's no use for us. Rams under silos are always fat. Their daughters have to be run like that. They're no use for us. Changing environments, because we've got a changing environment, there's always risk, and so we need some animals that we can actually change some condition scores on at time. We've got the ability to get in lamb and survive. Our parasite tolerance now has meant that this last springtime, our adult ewes, we expected to have to drench the whole lot on the first summer reduction drench, and they came back and they're low. And we're starting to feel the value of that coming through the flock because we've spent so much time and effort over time. And there's characteristics that these animals have now just by being performance recorded that you like, because they keep turning up at the yards. Every time they turn up at the yards, they must be alive. That's the first rule. It's always the rule too. Wait, I've missed that one again. I must have hit the wrong screen. Just a bit on current production. This is 215 and it's 3 at 216. These are straight off stud records. These are some singles. Birth weights would have been too high for optimum survival. They're growing at 440 grams a day. They're 50 kilos at about 90 days. So 87% survival of those, and 11 ewes to the hectare, our single stocking rate. They're doing 500 kilos to the hectare of lamb. That's at weaning time too, with some growth time after that. This is our singles, twins and triplets in 216 off the stud records. Interesting to see that our stud twins are still too light for optimum survival at 4.3. They were too heavy that year. Triplets here at 3.5. At these sorts of survival rates and those stocking rates, we're doing about 400 kilos per hectare of lamb. And just they equate to around a little bit over 20 kilos of carcass weight per ewe joined. And this is just from Sandy McEachran came through MLA the other day. Our ewe stocking rates are about right on here, about 8.3 for an 830mm rainfall. We're doing 24 kilos of lamb dressed or sold per ewe joined, and that's at weaning time with some growth. So we're doing above that. This statement here, 250 grams a day, producers get caught up on weaning percentages without measuring growth. I think we need to have another look at that. And we're just talking so much about more lambs, but those growth rates are allowing our properties to get very good returns, and that's the top 10 producers out of 60 producers in southern Australia down into Tassie with prime lamb systems. And so that's what the top 10 producers were doing. So that's pretty hot off the press. 2,000 stud ewes with twins in them the other day. There's a $25 per ewe genetic difference in them. Maternal ewes from 115 to 140 maternal dollar index. you can't tell me where the best sheep is. I can read ink on paper, black ink on white paper. We've got sheep in there that are going to do no money at all. We've got sheep in there that are going to have one lamb at 120, two at 100, or three at 90. They all walk past, they're white and they're woolly. We just have to get into the numbers. We have to measure them, and we have to just keep pushing into that area. This is what I'll talk about now, everyday thoughts. This is what I think about. Pasture consumption, ASBVs, a yearly action plan, some survival and pregnancy scan, and some ewe lambs and a bit of blue sky. Growth is the genetic, growth is the characteristic that sets our efficiency, our system. We lamb our sheep, we lamb our lambs down at a point, and they've got so much time to get to when the pasture dries off. And so it's that patch of time. If they grow faster, we can lamb later to get to the fixed point of time when they're finished. If they grow slower, we have to lamb earlier. But growth's got some very interesting things. What it does is it changes stocking rate, it changes pasture utilisation rate. And so there's a three-dimensional loop that operates around growth. And what growth does is that one of the things it does is it allows you to change your reproduction rate, because this is January to December, shorter day length, number of ewes cycling and reproduction rate. So the later we join, the higher the reproduction rate. So if we can have fast growing sheep and we join later, we get higher reproduction rate. And then by having higher reproduction rate, we then have the ability to eat pasture. There's our spring curves in the last few years. And so what we're really doing is, in our system, we're dropping lambs here, and then we're trying to eat as much of the spring as we can. So it's your job to decide if you want to eat how much pasture, utilisation. That's us this year. 45% is the Hamilton number. Sometimes I read 35 in the paper this week. We eat this much. But by having fast-growing sheep, we can lamb them here. We can have higher reproduction rates because it suits the system. We also know in mid-pregnancy they're only at 1.3 DSC, then 1.4, and then when they lamb, they go to here. So if we lamb over here, we can't get many sheep into the springtime. So the more we go over there, the more we eat. So we're just more efficient, up to 70% when you've got pasture degradation. And that's about what happens with that reproduction thing. Ewes are doing 100 in November, ovulation rate. They're doing on May, which is right at their peak of ovulation at 200. It's about 17% ovulations a month. It's about 4.2 a week. It's 75% embryo survival. It's 3% lambs a week. But if you change it on your farm just a week, you won't know because you've got the year-on-year effects. But that's really what you're doing. So faster sheep, growth sheep, allow you to change the efficiency of your utilisation system. And really what's happened is that in the last 15 years, we had 18 kilo carcasses, and now we've gone to 22 kilo carcasses nationally. We've got 4 kilos carcass weight's about 8 kilos live weight, and all the increased genetics we've had for increased growth has allowed us to change the product. But what's happened is the abattoirs have changed their specs from 18 to 22. If they hadn't changed their specs, the genetics we have now would have allowed us to actually lamb on the same lamb a month later and still have the same carcass weight lambs come out. The abattoirs have changed used all the genetic space we had to be more efficient at pulling weight per hectare out. Genetics are just like a peg in the ground. I just think of genetics as a peg in the ground. They are where they are. You then decide where you want to move away from that peg. So define your directions. For me, it's growth, number of lambs, and parasite resistance. So I need to know they're there, I want to go there, I do some feedback off my lambs, I want to move there, I go and see what my reproduction's rate, I want to go there. If I need something on internal parasites for me, I go there. So I keep moving away from this fixed position. Rams provide the new DNA and they're 80% of the change. And maternal rams, if they make 60 ewes a year for 3 years, 200 roughly, they've got 5 lots of daughters that are there for 5 years. Their daughters are there for 5 years. And the great-granddaughters are there for 5 years. So maternal rams have 600 expressions of their own DNA. Terminal rams have 200. Merinos have less. So when you understand that, maternal rams have far-reaching long-term consequences because they have so much of it carried on, intergenerationally carried on. So culling of ewes, you're going to go and spend a lot of time mucking around culling a few ewes, or you're going to go and put some rams in the front and let the whole thing flow on for the next 15 years. Which one's the most important thing? So culling of ewes is just really fine tuning down the end, taking a little bit of dead wood out. This is just maternal indexes. This is the old maternal index, and two here with some new maternal indexes. This one here this one here is the one that's giving us a lot of growth here at post-weaning weight. You'll notice here that if we start to actually reduce adult weight, here where we've got minus on adult weight, we've got some changes in reproduction rate, 6 back to 2. Right, we've got some changes in post-eye muscle depth from 4 up to 7. So we've got a range of indexes we can use. The question is, which one do you use and why? So if you had some slow-growing sheep and you really needed to get them to market in a fixed time, you'd probably put some more growth into them. There's other people out there at the moment who've got some large sheep are saying we don't want our sheep to be any bigger, so we're going to actually cap adult weight. So there's a whole range of tools out there for you to use, systems to use. You just have to decide that's where the DNA is. I know where I am, I need to make a change. So use Lamb Plan figures to do that, and then use the Ram Select app. You can sit in and type up all the parameters you want and search and suck out the animals you want out of the national amount of rams that are available. Just on differential management, this is March to February across the year for us. This is how we organise our ewes. Conditions scored here at March at joining. We'll preg scan them here in June the other day. Now singles, twins and triplets will then go at different stocking rates from the day of preg scanning. We'll do another condition score at weaning time, and then in January when we shear them, we'll do them off the board just on eye. So we've got 4 or 5 times of the year where we do differential management of the ewes to try and give them all the best opportunity we can. This time at set stocking, we'll have paddock size and shelter and pasture quality involved, so that we put all the right animals in the right place at the right time on different pasture levels, and hopefully get a 5 kilo birth and a 250 grams a day and a 45 kilo lamb at the end. 12. If you go on to survival, we just do a bit on survival, knowing that this is little lambs and their survival, are we putting enough time and effort into areas that will give us the best bang for our buck? So here we've got starvation and mismothering. I think we'd have to get up in the morning and say that could be the priority. After that, dystocia, big singles. What's going to happen this year? You know, that's why we preg scan, to reduce that. Every time a lamb dies, one lamb dies per 100 ewes. At a $100 lamb, it's $1 per ewe. Click, 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 click. It's the cash register. So we need to look at those and make sure we're targeting what we need to get the best. Just for us, for cold weather, potential heat loss here is a combination of velocity, temperature and rainfall. That's how you measure it. And this is the difference in mortality when you get to that combination of those 3 factors at 1,000 wind chill. So if you've got merino twins, go and put them somewhere where you can keep the little fellas alive. If you've got merino, if you've got crossbred singles, they're pretty tolerant, aren't they? But these little fellas here, there's plenty of them out there this year. A lot of merino ewes preg scanning 150%. That means half the ewes are this zone. They need to be looked after really, really careful. So we're quite mindful of that, so we get them in the right place. And if you do a good job with either with trees or some of those some shelters, tall wheatgrass shelters, that's what you can get. Preg scanning, just home numbers, 38,000 ewes in the last few years. There's been these are 90% maternal composite ewes, 1.5 to 7 years of age approximately, 3% empties, 30 singles, 60 twins, 7 triplets. That's the breakdown you get. So that's year after year stuff. That's what my farm does. So when you see that, you go, well, okay, I know I'm going to put them somewhere. I know that I've got 3 lambs. There's 3 lambs inside every one of those, which equates to not many as that. So they become very important. As soon as you get that triplet number goes up, you start doing things. To get little lambs alive, birth weights. You know, those numbers I showed, those numbers before, I had triplets here at 3.5. There, not good enough. 4.5. Those other fellas that year where they were too heavy, they were up here. The graph's starting to dip over. So we need to be mindful of that. The condition score of the ewe. Condition score of singles, optimum for 90% survival, 2.9. Anyone's got fat singles this year, you're going to peel about 8% survival off. That's $8 a ewe. If you go to twins, here it's the other way. They're different sheep. She's got that requirement, she's got this requirement here. So we need to then not just leave them here, we need to put some twins there and put some singles there and get a better result across the two. 15. And that's what happens when you get it right. Set of triplet studs last year, 164 of them, 234 lambs, 234% at marking time, six paddocks of 5 hectares with trees all around. So if you do it right, and that's in a year that's had, like, mind you, about 45 inches. So little blighters do live if you give them a bit of a chance. Ewe lambs. It's 406 ewe lambs here. These are their fathers, they're 9 fathers, this many in each group. They're 8 months of age, 242 days, they're all out of adult ewes. The preg scan of them, this happens year after year on the farm, 155%. The average in the middle. This ram here, his daughters did 127. This ram's daughters, 182. If you got the wrong father, you won't have lambs. That's the message. It comes out time and time and time again. You got the wrong father, you won't have lambs. We had quite a lot. Had 8,000 ewe lamb records analysed. If you're born a single, that's your reproduction rate as your live weight changes. If you're born a twin, that's your reproduction rate. If you're born a triplet, that's your reproduction rate. So which one are you going to keep for replacement ewes this time? This is when they have lambs, live weight against their weaning rate of their own lambs. So where are you going to keep your replacement ewes from? Better keep the multiples, I reckon. This one here, 19, 20 month of age, 1.5-year-olds, those ewes the next time round, black. If she didn't have a lamb if she didn't scan a lamb as a lamb, where is she? Not a very profitable beast. All these graphs are straight and they're linear. So, yeah, where are you going to keep them from? Which ones? Just got enough time to throw that one in. Condition score ranges. You don't realise they're as large as they are. 3 score ewes here. 3 score ewes here at 50 kilos and 80 kilos. 30 kilos on the same frame, on the same ewe. That's the different weight against the condition scores. You don't know they're like that in your mob. That's straight out of some of my stud data. I did that graph the other day and was surprised. So by joining ewe lambs, we do get a chance to actually keep some of these weights down and probably be a little bit more efficient. Darren Gordon's involved with effects of mob size and stocking rate on lamb survival. We'll be involved with that this year. This is a bit of stuff, pregnancy scanning multiples, putting singles and twins in separate paddocks of sizes, trying to optimise the right size for survival and keeping those records. So that's a bit of new research. We've been involved in genomics. Maternal sheep have got very good eating quality. However, there's a range. We're testing our size, and if we have size that have got, when we get a choice, we won't use rams that have got lower eating quality, and we're looking forward to some indexes coming into maternal sheep in the future. Mark Inglis talked about here the feedback loop, which I'm looking forward to having animals come back into the database so that we can make maternal sheep better. We'll continue to keep working on ewe lamb mating potential because there's about a potential, they're at 8 months of age, they're reaching puberty now, and the New Zealand data shows that we should be able to get that back to 7.5 and keep dropping it lower and lower. So we're working in that. Number of lambs weaned from lamb planters now have the ability to split number of lambs born, weaned and survival into 3 component traits, which will increase that area. We'll continue to do some work on adult weight and condition score with efficiency, and all our sheep will stay run under the paddock conditions like they need to. So after 30 years later from my trip to the UK, I don't think it's much different. Those things are still there and these animals are delivering into these areas that we need on our farm and making us a good sound dollar. So that gives us a little bit of time for questions.
Thank you very much, John.
Basically paddock size, because it's about how many ewes are lambing on any given day. So paddock size is one. the issue is you have, the triplet ones are quite an interesting one, and you see it exaggerated there. You must be quite careful not to put triplets in a paddock with too much grass, or they all tend to go into the one area. The favoured grazing spot might be a bank up the corner and all lamb together and get mismothered. So the Kiwi trick is to put them on just enough pasture that the ewes don't get preg tox, but that actually drives the ewes apart in their search for feed, and that allows them to just be there while they have their multiples, a high number of multiples, but there's just enough feed growing underneath them. So they often actually stock them on less pastures, but with actually the ability on a lower stocking rate at 5.5 to 6 to the hectare, where they would have been normally a little bit higher, then the pasture grows through underneath them pretty quickly. So that's a very good thing on multiples.
So in that as well, if you are stocking them on like less pastures, are you supplementing with grain or pellets or anything?
No, not in our situation. But if you had twins, I mean, basically all you can do is reduce your mob size down to as low as 200 or less, whatever the recommendations are, and then put them on the correct amount of pasture, because they're going to have to stay there. But with triplets, you get the ability to put them on a little bit less, because there's less ewes per hectare in the pasture. Within a week or two grows through underneath them, and that just helps you there.
Do you actually try to early and late lambs when you're scanning? So that you
Yeah, we early and late, and the scanner takes about 15% of the, probably about 15%, probably not even quite that, out with just a different colour, and so that then we've got all the main sheep going through, and if we're going around ewes each day, it means that you don't have to go around 10%. When you get to the end of lambing, you've only got to go around those. You can actually start lamb marking another 10 days earlier. So when you go marking for a month, they start this big and they end up this big at the end of the month. So it's a very, very good tool just to just make the farm run a little bit better. Keep the boys who are picking them up on the go too. The question was, what criteria do we use to select rams to breed us ewe lambs that would get in lambs? So we would go and look at the yielding number of lambs weaned EBV, because it's the one that will allow us to pick out that ram that was producing daughters at 100, or having a group of daughters at 182. And there's a very high correlation from that piece of information and the yielding number of lambs weaned EBV. If you actually look at it, the graphs are just linear. I've got those graphs. So that's the column to look at.
I think there was one, yeah.
You mentioned something about the effect of the maternal ram against the merino ram. What was that figure that you quoted?
So it's the expressions of DNA, because of the maternal ram has his daughters there for 5 years, and then their daughters are there for 5, etc., etc. And just you end up with so many expressions of DNA from a maternal ram compared to the merino rams with lower reproduction rates, etc., etc. So you just get more bang for your buck from breeding a female animal. The female animal is the animal that's the engine of the farm.
Last question?
Then a female, yeah, growth rate, what's the number? I saw it the other day. I reckon I saw my ram lambs in the stud were about 3 or 4 kilos heavier at weaning than ewe lambs. I just hit the numbers and they just popped up. The numbers are pretty well defined. It's a percentage, yeah, a little bit. You'd prefer all weather lambs if you're killing them, and the females if you're keeping them. In my system, well, I suppose if we get it right with multiples, with triplets, it's at 80% survival. It's 240%. And if you, I know the numbers. Ewes with singles, you'll have 6 ewes with singles, and they'll produce a 50 kilo single. Ewes with twins, they'll have 2 45 kilo twins. But the best ewe each year will have 343 kilo triplets. So once 15 years ago we had we couldn't get over 100 kilos of lamb weaned per ewe. That was the holy grail, right? Now we've got to 128 kilos. So there's individual animals that are now doing 128 kilos of weaning, and you just go, well,
Let's not top it now.
we don't know. And so our animals are often about 10 years ahead genetically in farm systems than the management that comes in underneath them. And that's a global thing with animals around the world. What do they say about dairy cows? 80% of dairy cows are only fed to appetite 20% of the time.
Authorised by Victorian Government, 1 Treasury Place, Melbourne.